Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the New Mutants number 95, cover dated November 1990, and this is part 2 of X-Tinction Agenda. And of course the cover caption there at range shoulder makes the point that it is First Blood, and it looks like the first blood is that of a bloodless member of New Mutants, that is Warlock. So a pretty eye-catching cover by Rob Liefeld, penciling and inking his drawing. It is a classic trope of superhero comics. A character dies and one of the options for a cover design is going to be a pieta of some description, and that's what we're getting here. Very much Liefeld in his Arthur Adams phase of his early artwork career, and you most especially see that in the corner box little illustration there of Sunspot running towards the reader. I really like that little spot illustration. It's almost the best drawing on the cover. Let's open this one up to the first page. The first page catches readers up on Genosha and what the island is all about. It's an apartheid island, kind of half modelled on apartheid South Africa in the time period. What happens is any citizens who are detected on their 13th birthday to have mutant potential are mind wiped and are used as slave labour for the state. And so we were told all of that here in the third person narrative captions. And what's going on here on the right hand side of the page is that we've got mutates out working on the land, and they're looking towards the citadel here, and they see, you don't really see it in the art, they see a flash from the citadel. So I think that should be clearer in the art. There's some miscommunication between the script here and what Liefeld is drawing, and it speaks to the fact that there was not a good working relationship between Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld at the time. So Pipeline is sending New Mutants more slaves to the Citadel. This picks up from the end of Uncanny X-Men 270, and the mutate here turns back to his work saying none of our business, 985, because the mutates don't have names. Boss is watching, get back to work. And this is basically a photocopy or Xerox of the top panel. So Liefeld saving some time on that particular page. Now turn the page over and we get a double page splash image. Just make sure that you can see that there on screen. We've got Pipeline there. He was introduced in Uncanny X-Men 235, which is the first appearance of Genosha in the X comics, and Pipeline is able to transmaterialize characters, be they magistrates or be they, in this case, Storm and a trio of the New Mutants plus Warlock to the Genoshan Citadel. But that's a pretty good image there of Cameron Hodge in his new cybernetic suit that provides life-sustaining support to his severed head, his head severed by Archangel in an issue of X Factor a couple of years before. Title of the story is Shell Game. Creative team there, Louise Simonson, writer Rob Liefeld, and company art. So Liefeld having some assists there with aspects of the art, and my guess is that those assists are to do with backgrounds, and also maybe even Cameron Hodge's cyber mechanical suit that his head is wearing, because it's pretty well drawn in this issue. Joe Rubinstein and company inker. So a bunch of different inkers involved in this, but primarily Rubinstein. Joe Rosen letterer, and Brad Van Kata colorist. And it looks like he was a late addition to the creative team there, because the way that his name is lettered there, it looks like it was the last added to the creative roll call. So what happens here is that Warlock is the last to be transmaterialized, and it looks like he is in some trouble. And the different characters are thinking here. privately thoughts to themselves. Boom Boom, of course, has mentioned that they have transmaterialized without their uniforms, so they're naked. And Storm thinks to herself, it must be some function of their teleportation device. Leave it to Boom Boom to state the obvious. Rain is so shy, so modest, this must be torture for her, and yet she's bearing it with surprising equanimity. It's as if she doesn't notice, almost like. And then we go to Richter's thoughts. But the colorist here, Brad Van Kata, has, probably because he had to color this at some speed, has mistaken Richter for Sunspot, for Roberto da Costa. So he's coloring him in the wrong skin tone. In any case, Richter thinks we're drugged. I can feel the poisons acting in my mind, calming my reactions. Just as well to have that excuse. Probably couldn't move in any case, faced with that horror. So Richter has a history with Cameron Hodge that will emerge in the course of the issue. And Rain truly doesn't care about being naked, hardly cares, she thinks. None of this can be real, especially that monstrosity, that mechanical man-headed spider. And that's a good description of the cyber mechanical suit that Hodge is wearing. It's kind of like a cross between a spider and a scorpion. And again, you can see it's quite well drawn there. And maybe that is one of Liefeld's art assistants doing that job. Because Liefeld, of course, as everyone knows, prefers the figure drawing and layout job and not so much backgrounds or any kind of tech type drawing. So Rain transforms into her werewolf form, and she basically exclaims, naked and helpless, they may have brought us here, but we will not remain so. And so she picks up Warlock and is delighted that he can speak. She was worried that he might have been dead. And then she asks Hodge who he is. That's for me to know, little wolf, and you to find out. But by the time you do, it will be too late. What is it, Richter? Why do you say nothing? Cat got your tongue. So Hodge is a real sadist. He enjoys the discomfort of other people. He's a real malevolent type figure, a proper villain for this X-Tinction Agenda crossover event series. Then he gets to his orders. Guards, signal Wipeout that it's safe to come in. I want them to remove their powers now. So Wipeout is another character who first appeared in the first Genoshans storyline in Uncanny X-Men 235 to 238. You'll find reviews of those issues in the back catalogue on this channel if you're interested. And Storm has encountered Wipeout before. That we cannot allow, she says. So she uses her elemental powers, but because she has been de-aged by Nanny, she does not have the full control or full force of her powers that she would in her adult body. So now we get a nice little action page here. Cameron Hodge, being protected by the Genoshan magistrates. They're drawn pretty well too in terms of their very particular costume design. That goes back to Rick Leonardi and Mark Silvestri's design of Genoshan tech and magistrates costumes. And again, I wonder, did Liefeld get a little help drawing those costumes so that they're consistent with the established design, or did he do it himself? Boom Boom uses her powers here to cast a time bomb at one of the magistrates, and Rain here attacks them too. That's a pretty nice anchor image there. And what happens now is that Wipeout finally gets around to using her powers, and we see Storm drop to the ground as an indication that the mutants have lost their powers. So we get a little note here regarding Richter and his past history with Hodge, that he was Hodge's hostage when Hodge ran the right organization. And the specific issue of X-Factor involved is, X-Factor number 16. So, and then what happens is they're basically kneeling on the ground here. Interesting top-down angle. And Hodge continues, as you see, Richter, your earthquake has stopped. You have not the ability to prevail against me. You mutants are prisoners of Genosha, slated to face trial and execution for crimes against the state. And of course, Tabitha Boom Boom protests crimes, but we've never been in Genosha. And Hodge responds, not entirely true. Storm was here in her adult incarnation. You see, Storm, your pathetic effort to delude my magistrates and play the helpless child has failed. Your gene print confirms your true identity. Beyond question, officially you will stand trial as X-Men. Now, that is an interesting little riddle here, because Roma's spell is supposed to be the spell she casts on the X-Men in Uncanny X-Men 229 is supposed to be still in effect, that the X-Men are supposed to be invisible to human tech, but somehow Storm's gene print has been taken. Now, was it taken just by a simple blood test rather than some kind of technological scan? Maybe it's the former, a blood test that determined her gene print. Your gene print confirms your true identity beyond question. Officially, you'll stand trial as X-Men. Unofficially, of course, you are in my power. You owe me your lives, and I will see that you'll never escape to wreak your mutant havoc again upon an unsuspecting world. So Hodge really has a hatred, a deep hatred towards mutants, and that is what is driving him here throughout the course of the crossover. And then the scene switches back to the grounds of the X-Mansion and the aftermath of the conclusion of Uncanny X-Men 270, the first part of the X-Tinction Agenda crossover. So there's a lot of just kind of figuring out what happened, where the New Mutants and where Storm have disappeared to. And so there's just catch-up going on here in the dialogue. But I like the drawings by Liefeld. I like this top-down angle. I like the fact that there is consistency in the background, that it is autumn when this story is taking place. And those are pretty well-drawn figures of Gambit, Sunspot, Cable, and Forge there. Everybody looks on model pretty much. So, going past the expositional dialogue, we have the arrival of Cannonball and Banshee. It's a pretty good looking version of Banshee. Again, I like the colours on this page, evoking that autumn background. And this is an interesting piece of characterization. This is one of Gambit's very early appearances, and his only concern is about the disappeared Storm. And what of those on the surface, Cable? What of Storm? And Cable responds, the fate of the others doesn't concern you, Gambit. And he says, what care I for the others whom I hardly know? It is the fate of my partner that matters, as your students concern you. Now notice that Louise Simonson is not giving Gambit any kind of Cajun dialect or idioms in his speech pattern there. He's speaking normally, so to speak, and actually very grammatically correctly. What care I for the others whom I hardly know? It hardly sounds like Gambit at all, as his speech pattern was established by Claremont in his early appearances. Well, Cable continues and says, when we disentangled ourselves from Stevie and tried the hatch, which your partner had slammed shut, a second time it was fused shut. Now that was Havoc did that in the previous issue. So we went back out the back way, up through the lake, but by the time we got here, this was all we found, says Forge. Storm seems to be missing, Gambit. Missing, Gambit says, but where can she have gone? Who has taken her? So there's a kind of a lot of panels spent on recapping what happened at the end of the first part of the crossover. And, you know, I get it. Like, this could be somebody's first issue of the crossover. You know, someone who's reading New Mutants and not reading Uncanny X-Men. But it's a little bit clunky. I think the catch-up should be done just on one page and not be continuing into a second page here. And finally, Stevie emerges from the hatch, which Storm pushed her into on top of Cable in order to protect her. And Storm also told Stevie to contact X-Factor. And so she says, I reached X-Factor by phone, Cable. and ask them to join us here. They're on their way. And then the scene switches back to Genosha. The powerless New Mutants have been dressed in the full-length swimsuits of mutates and hurled into a communal cell pending their arraignment. So in the cell, Rain is concerned most of all with Warlock and his weakened condition, and he explains, like Self Friends, was transformed to electronic impulses during transfer, but when Self was reassembled, most of life energy which animates Self had been lost. I think Liefeld, in fairness to him, does a very good version of Warlock, very much on model with Arthur Adams' established design, or not his established design, but rather his way of drawing the character. I think that Liefeld does a good job. This is an interesting page too, not much in the way of backgrounds, but interesting choice to have all horizontal panels on the page. So a lot of dialogue here around Warlock, and basically the decision is made to share some life energy with Warlock. Warlock is concerned. That's something that Doug Ramsey did some months before his death, and Warlock was concerned that the transmode virus might be contracted by Doug, and Storm says, Doug is dead, so we'll never know whether they might contract it too, but without our energy, you almost certainly will be dead too. So they are about to transfer the energy when they're interrupted by the arrival of the monster, Cameron Hodge, and he exclaims away from him, little nameless numbers, little mutant unpersons. That's some pretty good dialogue there in terms of characterizing Hodge as the monster, mutant-hating monster that he is. That is not what I had in mind. It is not you, but I who will be infected by Warlock's transmode virus and will derive the ability to shift the shape of my body at will. For all its unconventionality, this body has many advantages. Shall I show you some of them? He says, how easily orders leap to your lips and you no longer lead the X-Men. You see, this is what I'm saying. There's this little confusion between the script that Simonson has written and the way that Liefeld has interpreted it in the art. So how does this connect with what Storm is saying up here? Cameron Hodge, how did you manage to sneak up on us so quietly? That's not an order, but maybe he's referring back to Storm basically making the decision that they would share a little bit of their life force with Warlock. So as I said, there's just this disjunction between the script and the art. These are two creators, Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld, that are not working well together. Totally different from the collaboration between Claremont and Lee in other parts of the crossover. So Rain is grabbed by one of Hodge's tentacles, and Richter, who is in love with Rain at the time and vice versa, leaps forward to help her. And so Hodge is attacking him there as well. We thought you were dead, Hodge, says Richter. But however you survived, whatever's happening to you, it's fitting. You should have a monster's body to match your monster's soul. That's pretty good dialogue. And then there's some good storytelling here where Hodge's tentacles slam away, knock away Storm and Richter up against the walls. And then he continues and says, I forget that you, Unit 2347, he's talking to Richter, who were once the mutant called Richter, more than all the others have reason to know and to fear me. But what happened to you before is nothing compared to what I have planned for your future. But even that will be nothing compared to what has already happened to me. You see, I had made a bargain with the demon Nastir that I would not die. And when your teammate Archangel cut off my head with his razor-sharp wings, my head still lived. My cybernetics experts constructed this powerful mechanical body for me. Very strong, very deadly, but alas, not very beautiful. That's an understatement. And he continues and says, but soon I will appropriate Warlock's ability to alter my body's shape at will without losing an erg of its power. So that's what he's up to. That's what he wants Warlock for. And it must have been a plan he came up with on the fly, because there was no guarantee that Warlock was going to be taken by the magistrates when they arrived on the grounds of the X-Mansion. He has, it would seem, come up with a plan on the fly. That's a nice reverse angle there on his mechanical body, very much like a scorpion from that perspective. And again, I wonder, is that Liefeld doing the drawing, or does he have an artist assistant who is taking care of the tech in this particular issue? So Storm makes the point, Hodge has taken Warlock and we can do nothing, but Reign is freed. So Hodge phases out through the cell walls, and Storm says that creature's mad and here we are in his power. Somehow we must escape. Now Storm is a trained thief and escape artist. It's what she's famous for. And so you'd have to put odds on her escaping from that cell. And then the scene switches to a laboratory complex within the Citadel. And it is the complex overseen by the Genioneer, Dr. Moreau. And he has a young mutant in front of him, 13 years old. And he's giving him a talk about his duty to the state. And the 13-year-old, of course, wants to remember his mother, his dad. They love me, I don't want to forget. You'll shave my head, I'll have a number on my forehead. I'll be bonded forever to a mutate suit. My friends, my family will see. And Dr. Moreau, and the way that he's characterized since his introduction by Claremont is that he is a man who really believes in what he does. He believes what he does is right. He believes it's all about duty. He, in effect, is a functionary of a totalitarian apartheid state. We'll do our best to assign you. Far from them. It is not our intention to cause them pain, though it's unlikely that they'll know you. Most people never look beyond the suit and number to see a mutate's face. And he's saying this to comfort the poor teen. It really is a study in the banality of evil. So let's continue, get past the ads there. And we have the sudden arrival of Cameron Hodge, who's arrived into the Gene Engineer's laboratory with the body of Warlock, the weakened body of Warlock, who never got to share in those proffered life energies of the New Mutants and Storm. And then he gets into an argument with the Gene Engineer because he wants the Gene Engineer to help him be infected by Warlock's transmode virus. The captured mutants are to be transformed into servants and supply new genetic materials, all for Genosh's gene banks, says the Gene Engineer. But Warlock is a being alien to Earth, no real mutant at all, and his genetic material would be useless to you. So they're having this back and forth. Moreau doesn't want to help Hodge. Meanwhile, Warlock is thinking he's got enough power to slither away while they're engrossed in their argument. And then we check back in on the New Mutants and Storm in the cell. Storm is examining the cell and determines that the bars on the cell are no ordinary bars. They're force field generators. That must be how Hodge passed through them. So she continues and says, I still cannot shake the certainty that one of the magistrates who captured us was Cyclops' brother, Havoc. And that's correct. She's correct on that score. But Boom Boom is angry with Storm, and I guess that's why you got us captured, so you could come after one of your precious lost X-Men. In shutting the hatch on half our major firepower, including Cable, you royally screwed up our chance for escape and practically handed us to the bad guys tied in ribbons. So Boom Boom always gets to the emotional heart of the matter, and Storm replies it was a gamble, a calculated risk. Gamble? Just what were you gambling on? So Storm explains her strategy here on saving the others from the magistrates so that they would be alive to come after us in force. And Boom Boom's still angry. Yeah, right, give me a break, Storm. They don't even know where we are. You may have been great in the old days when you were a grown-up, but raging teenage hormones must have addled your brain. That's pretty good. I like that little moment there. So Boom Boom really not in awe of Storm at all. And on the other side of the cell, Richter here is, he is emotionally perturbed by seeing Cameron Hodge again. He says to Rain, "I was so scared. It must have shown from the second I heard his voice. I could hardly force myself to move." And Rain says, "But we were all frightened." Let me get this nice close-up on Richter here. "Not like me. You see, Hodge captured me before when I was younger. He tortured me, almost forced me to topple San Francisco with my seismic power till X Factor saved me." So that's precisely the reference back to X Factor number 16. And when we heard Archangel had killed him, I was glad. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. And now he's alive again, and here we are, trapped in my worst nightmare. That's a pretty nice little heart-to-heart scene there, and interesting characterization of Richter with that traumatic experience of how Hodge tortured and used him, and it affecting him emotionally in terms of seeing him again. It's nicely done and nicely thought out. So now Warlock explains to them, well, he's arrived in their cell, and he explains what the plan is by the G-Engineer, how they're going to be turned into mutates. There's good drawings there by Liefeld. Again, I think he does a nice job with Warlock on the model of how Art Adams used to draw him. So Warlock says he'll help them because he's studied the Genoshan technology and he's thought of a plan. But we must hurry before Hodge and G-Engineer concludes argument and notices Self's absence. So he is determined to interfere with the computer lock that binds the force field together. But Boom Boom's worried about how much energy, life energy, that will drain from him. But he's determined to make the sacrifice. "He's alive," says Boom Boom, "barely. Locke, take some of my energy quick before so they lift him up, and they're running away from the cell. They're out and they're splitting up. And what happens here is that Rain wants to help Warlock escape, doesn't want him to fall into the hands of Hodge and the G-Engineer. And Richter basically demurs and says, "We can't carry him, and if we stay with him, we'll get recaptured. Our only chance is to split up, scatter, and try to reach the outside." And he reminds Rain that we've been trained by Cable. So this is a nice little point made here, that the New Mutants have had a new injection of aggression by virtue of the arrival of Cable in issue 87, and it's changed their mentality. Their skill levels are different, and they're capable of escaping from the Citadel in a way that they wouldn't have been before Cable took over charge of them and started training them. So Warlock's left behind, and seconds later Havoc arrives. So having emerged on the other side of the Siege Perilous, Havoc was deposited in Genosha and has become a magistrate in the service of the state. And Hodge orders Havoc to go after the escaped New Mutants, hound them without mercy. But remember, I want that gene joke vermin alive. And as for this alien mutant troublemaker, he and his power will now be mine. So he's continuing with his plan. And now we're into the last act of this 3-act story chapter. And X Factor finally arrive on the grounds of the X Mansion. That's a pretty nice shot there again by Liefeld. And again, I wonder, is there somebody assisting the pencils, his pencils there, with the drawing of X Factor's flying vehicle, because it looks pretty good. And so we have, I like that, Cyclops and Banshee shaking hands, and no shake hands between Cyclops and Cable. "We came as soon as we got your call. What's happened?" And what is known of the mysterious disappearance is told, so we don't get a recap on that. No matter what dangers threaten my students, Cable still has a bee in his bonnet, so to speak, a chip on his shoulder about Storm locking them out of the battle. He says Storm had no right to lock us out of the battle, to take matters so completely into her own hands. Look at this. It was the school's exterior hatch. So Cyclops recognizes it's melted, fused as if by a plasma blast, like the kind my brother Alex wields, or used to wield before he disappeared. And Cannonball arrives. There was a call from Val Cooper in Washington to make an announcement about the trial and execution of some captive mutants. Alright, so the plot is thickening, and then we're back in the Citadel, and Rain and Richter's determined that they continue their bid to escape, but they reach these branching tunnels or corridors. So if they split up, they have a better chance of breaking free. And so she says to him, "You don't trust me, do you? You think the second your back is turned, I'll go back for Warlock? We've escaped, Rick, at least so far. Do you really think I'm daft enough to confront Hodge on my own?" So he kisses her goodbye. "I'll be waiting for you at the embassy." And of course, she goes back for Warlock. "I love Doug," she thinks, "but he never made me feel like this, so wonderful that it must somehow be wrong. Rick was right to suspect me. I hope he won't be too angry when he finds out. He'll reach the outside and bring Cable, and I'll find Warlock and do what I can to keep him alive, even if it's only to share energy till we both can be rescued." Because of course, Rain does not want another member of the team to die. "I love Rick," she thinks. "I want to do as he wishes, but Doug was the last teammate who'll sacrifice himself for me." So she hears Warlock screaming in pain, and then she leaps at the magistrates here. And again, you can see here a disjunction between what we're seeing in the art, or the order of what we're seeing in the art, and how Louise Simonson is dialoguing the comic. So we get the thoughts here of Rain. The monsters have him strapped into some contraption that's connected by tubes to Hodge's metal body, because we can't see any of that on the page. Hodge is mad. He really believes that machine can infuse Warlock's shape-shifting ability into his body. Can such a thing be possible? Warlock glowing white hot. He's in agony. I must stop this travesty at all costs. So we can see that over here. But like I said, there just isn't a good synergy between writer and artist. So she goes into action. It seems to me that if there's any pages that are not inked by Rubinstein, this could be one of them here. Likewise, this one. It doesn't seem as much his style. It seems a little rougher than what I would expect from him. And of course, there's another bit of confusion here. So Rain goes up against Hodge. It's Hodge. She says here, Hodge's tentacle already resembles a hand. So the process, whatever it is working. Hodge is gaining control over his mechanical body and is able to transform it. Locke's life energy is flowing through those tubes, transforming Hodge with its power. Soon Hodge will win and Warlock will die unless... And here it becomes a bit confusing. We get this sound effect rip, and Hodge seems to strike Rain as she was leaping towards him, like to knock her away. But something else has happened, but it's not clear in the art. So it only emerges in the dialogue given to Hodge, where he shouts, "No, you've sundered the bond between us and foiled the transference." But that isn't at all clear in the art. "You've doomed me to this body, but your teammate is likewise doomed. Look at him, Jean joke, he's dying." And so Warlock fades away, and that's a really good expression on his face. Really conveys the horror of the fact that he is in effect dying. That is nicely done by Liefeld. And Hodge here disgusted that the opportunity for him to gain control over that mechanical body is gone. But the sadist that he is, he says, your friend's death has hurt you, hasn't it? As it will hurt all your teammates. At least I can take satisfaction in that. So a real nasty piece of work is Cameron Hodge. And Rain is sad, very sad at the loss of Warlock. I tried, but I couldn't save you either. There's nothing left of you at all but dust. And then the scene switches to the X-Mansion's underground complex. And there's a news report on the television. The Minister of Defense has just handed me a note saying that the mutant called Warlock was killed while trying to escape an incident, which Genosha sincerely regrets. Our other mutant captives will be tried as enemies of the state, and if found guilty, will be executed. So they see a picture of Rain on the television. That's a pretty nice panel there. Little use of a screen tone on the metallic surfaces of Cable's bionic arm. And so Jean says, we've got to go to Genosha, get them back now before these madmen carry out their plan. And then it is 1990, the phone rings, and Forge says it was Val Cooper, Secretary in charge of Mutant Affairs. The President requests our presence in Washington, but does he want to offer assistance or stop us from acting? And it's Beast who's given the last line of dialogue. I guess we'll know when we get there. Come on, folks. If we scramble, we can be there in half an hour. So that's it. That is the conclusion of the second chapter of X-Tinction Agenda. And here in the kind of like upcoming advertisement for the other parts, we're told in X-Factor 60, X-Factor goes to war. Then in X-Men 271, Wolverine joins the action. And be here in 30 when the New Mutants and Jubilee learn firsthand what Genosha is all about. Okay, so I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on part 2 of X-Tinction Agenda. As I said throughout the review, you've got not too bad Rob Liefeld art, some decent pages in there, some pretty good panels. The tech looks good, but it could be by virtue of a penciling assist from someone helping with that aspect of the drawings. And then there are those few pages that really indicate that poor working relationship between writer and artist, between Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld, that ultimately would end in Simonson being dropped from the book and Liefeld being promoted to plotter of the book, and Fabian Nicieza coming in with issue 98 as the scripter, just adding dialogue and narrative captions to Liefeld's plots. So let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comments section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.